Hello there and welcome to the next episode of Ramble On. Mr Mayor, I can't remember what episode we're up to, but I'm sure
it has to be in the low teens.
It's got to be, yes. So it's been good times, and a little while since we have got together, Mr Mayor. I guess had other pressing issues, but what have you been up to?
Look, there has been a lot on. I mean, I've been bouncing around doing a lot of council things, but also my day job still exists, and it's probably worth reminding everybody that I think all the councillors do have other activities and other jobs that they need to commit to. So I'm no different.
They do indeed, and I think for the most part, councillors are very giving of their time too for the small recompense they get. For the amount of time they put in. Everybody obviously puts in a little bit different in terms of time, but essentially I think we've got a reasonably good solid group that put in their fair share of time, so that recompense is small by comparison, but nonetheless that's part of our system. So speaking of systems and government, I guess some big news is in the last week, the retirement of our local member Adam Marshall.
It does seem strange when someone who's 39, you speak about them retiring. But as he said, he's sort of done his life in reverse. Most people have a inverted commas normal career and then morph to politics. But he's started, in local government at age 19, and at age 39, he's now stepping down as the member for Northern Tablelands. So wish him all the very best. I don't know what his next step is. I know it's in the corporate sphere, but he's staying stum on the details.
Yeah, fair enough too. And I think, in terms of a local member, I'm not sure that you can ask for a better one. He's been really great for this region, in my view, and just having watched him over the years from afar, just what he does do for his region and his electorate, he's really solid. And I know from your own perspective, being able to get access to ministers and such.
Look, it really is an access thing, and I think regardless of your political stripe, you have to acknowledge that he is very, very dedicated to the region. That extends through to when we need to see ministers, so whether it was the Coalition or the current Labor, he is able to get us in there. And it was only 3 or 4 weeks ago that I was down with the Deputy Mayor Todd Redwood and also the Mayor and Deputy of Glen Innes, originally just to meet Jenny Aitchison, the Minister for Regional Transport, to get clarity around the rail corridor. But when we were there, he'd also lined up a meeting with the Premier, a meeting with the Treasurer, and there was a meeting lined up that didn't go ahead because we spent too long with the Treasurer. He'd lined up a meeting with Penny Sharp, who's the Minister for Energy.
Right, great access.
And the Premier actually said to us, and I'm sure he wasn't just sort of tickling Adam's toes and saying it, but he said, you blokes do realise how lucky you are that he is able to get in here. Not every member has the same access. So I think that leads to, it's not sort of where is Adam going to go, it's sort of who follows.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
And it'll be really interesting to see. I think there'll be a big pool, no doubt. The Nats will be putting somebody up. I expect all the major parties will have someone, but I reckon there'll be a fair few independents as well. But Adam certainly set a standard in terms of what we think representation looks like.
I agree.
And, for local government, we really rely on state government for the bulk of our funding. And so we need to have good relations there. In the 2 years I've been in this role, it's pretty obvious that the regions are overlooked relative to the metro areas. And so we need somebody who's going to advocate, not just take what's served up. It'll be really interesting. It'll be good for someone with some runs on the board and a bit of clout.
Now, the logical question, Mr Mayor, and it's the one on everyone's lips as soon as they hear us talking about this, are you going to be the next local member for the New England?
No, I'm not.
Northern Tablelands, I should say.
The Northern Tablelands, no, I'm not. And this will probably disappoint some people, I'm a very happy mayor.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
So, but anyway, we'll find out in September. I may not even be on council.
Indeed. Well, that's, just to anyone that's not aware, our local government election's coming up on the 14th of September this year. And so council will be getting some information out over the next little while, just prompting people to that fact, or notifying people about that fact, and encouraging people to run should they wish to make their contribution to local politics. I guess, Mr Mayor, other big news, around the RES, around the rail trail, around voluntary planning agreements, a lot of work that we've been doing there. Anything you can share with us?
I think there's a lot that has been happening in the background, or not in the background. It's normal course of business for you and your team, and the councillors dip in and out of it. But the renewable energy zone, that continues to be developed. And whilst emotions aren't running as hot here in Armidale, the corridor for the renewable energy zone, or to be a RES, really is just the transmission lines coming up from the Hunter, and so that corridor has been narrowed down, and where the actual hub is going, which is out Burralong Way, they haven't finalised it yet. But they'll be calling for They'll be calling for a network, or someone to build it and someone to operate it fairly shortly, and we should start to see things moving here. So that's been happening, and then we know that there's a lot more interest, of course, from developers to build the renewable projects. So the state government is building the transmission infrastructure, but it's the private sector that's going to provide the generation. So we have been in talks with, because they like to come and see us, and there's members of your team, and I get roped into those discussions as well. So we've had people from the Burralong project, the Doughboy project, so that's 2 wind projects of late, and then there've been 2 battery projects as well. So one out at the existing Metz solar farm, and another battery that's going to be adjacent to the the substation.
Oh yes,
yeah, just to the east of town there. Yes. So just having some discussions there. They're starting to get cracking. I think the battery ones are a bit more advanced. So certainly, the 2 battery projects have been issued their EIS, which means they have to answer a whole bunch of questions before approval can be given. Yeah. The Doughboy wind farm's in the same situation. Burralong isn't, and I'm aware of a couple of other wind projects as well, but they're just sort of a bit peripheral at the moment. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, some angst in other areas because of the RES and whatnot, and I think you might have touched on, it's probably fair to say that we're not seeing that same level of angst. Do you have a view around why that might be? I mean, is it that as a council we've been able to get on the front foot and really talk about what it is that we want up front?
I'd like to congratulate us, but we're not prone to doing that. No, I don't think it really has been council as much as, say, the one where the most angst is around here is Walker, but there's just not as much going on outside of agriculture at Walker, and so it's a much smaller community, so it's easier for a small issue to affect proportionally a greater number of people.
Yeah, sure.
Here, our angst seems to be around hosts who are, being very, very well compensated to either have a wind or a solar project on their properties. And it's important to bear in mind the developers don't, they're not forcing landholders to do that. They're going willingly, and they're fairly compensated. So a lot of the angst is really the near neighbours who, I guess, see most of the downside or all of the downside and not much upside.
Yeah.
And I'd say if I were to break down the RES here or that renewable energy developments in this region, I'd say about 5% of our population is really excited about it. Either they're landholders that are going to be very well compensated, or they're just dyed-in-the-wool greens where this is the most wonderful thing ever and there'll be free power coming out of trees. So that'd be about 5% of the population. I reckon about 15% are dead against it, either near neighbours that with no upside, or it's just it's just something that culturally just doesn't sit well with people.
Yep.
But I reckon 80% of people are pretty agnostic.
True.
Because at the moment, it's just a concept. And it won't be until a couple of years where we become high-vis central when the construction starts. And then ultimately you can start seeing things on the horizon.
Yeah, no, that's a fair call. Now you reeled off probably a number of projects that are either underway or discussions, and I think courtesy of probably being quite active in that space, we've got a lot of those developers will come to us now in the first instance for a discussion. Voluntary planning agreements, I know we've touched on them before, but do you want to just sort of elaborate on that a little bit and then what you see the proceeds of those going towards?
Yes, well, it is something that we've spoken on this program before, and it's really about building that intergenerational benefit, which is why we're putting together the Future Fund, and I happen to have on fairly good advice that much more detail around that Future Fund will be in the April council meeting, so hopefully this podcast is out before then.
Good stuff, yeah.
And so I think the process, for those that are interested, is that there'll be a workshop with some all councillors, just to refine that a bit, and then put it up on public exhibition before finally adopting a Future Fund. And we'll be, I think, one of the first councils anywhere to create such an instrument.
Yes.
And so the monies from the planning agreements, the bulk of those, so we've managed to get some legislation changed, and we've had the legal advice around it, that all of the funds from those planning agreements can be pooled into a Future Fund.
Yep.
To enable us to have that intergenerational benefit. So of the income that's generated, council will have a say over where some of that money goes, but it'll have to be on amenities, not into, the consolidated revenue or the general fund to fix potholes. It's not for business as usual.
No.
And the community groups will have a say over where a fair chunk of that goes as well. So it'll be a good thing.
Yeah, and just, when we look at, and people can do their own research on the value of the voluntary planning agreements that council's negotiating with these renewables developers, but, it's going to be a sizable pool of funds in that Future Fund, and the interest off that and that ability to create that intergenerational wealth and prosperity for the community of Armidale and the broader region will be an incredibly significant legacy to leave.
Yeah, you're right. Well, it's going to be in the tens of millions, and where we're allowed to invest is really governed by the rules that apply to a council. So whilst it will be a committee of council, the idea is that it will actually be, and council will ultimately be responsible and have to sign off on the decisions, but the governance and the governing body will be overwhelmingly independent, but they still have to invest. So with the whatever the standard things are, which is largely term deposits.
Yes.
So we're not going to run into a Bear Stearns style situation.
Not all on red at the casino.
No.
Yeah.
As attractive as that might be.
No, that's it. Well, at least once. I think that's great. And for anybody that wants any more information on that, both Sam or I would be more than happy, or both be happy to give people any sort of information that we can. As Sam mentioned, got a report coming up to council, hopefully to the April meeting. And that'll flesh that out.
And I think it's likely that there'll be one of these planning agreements goes up before council as well.
Yes.
So the last one that council gave the thumbs up to was Oxley Solar.
Yes.
And that had an amount going into the Future Fund. And then there were a couple of other bits and pieces as well. So what happens is the developer makes an offer to council. And then we determine whether to accept that offer or not. And so with Oxley Solar, I think monetarily it came to about 1.61% of what was determined to be construction cost at the time.
Yes.
With the bulk of that going into a Future Fund, there was a small annual payment to our project 030, and then there was also some funding to put in EV charging stations.
Yeah.
And the developers want some of that. Some things they can brand. So I'm not sure what's in this one that might come up in April, but I think in addition to money into the Future Fund, there will be some other community bits and pieces that they'd like to put forward. So that'll be interesting.
No, it will be. No, it all goes well for the future in terms of the region more broadly. You mentioned earlier too the meeting with the Premier and the Treasurer and a couple of our neighbouring with our neighbouring council, the rail trail.
Yeah, look,
that's what that was essentially about.
Well, it was probably more around getting clarity about what the government's position is on the rail corridor going north. And despite what's written in various publications or online, I need to say that if the trains were running, or if there was any chance that the trains would be, heading north from here, I'd be all for it.
Indeed.
But the government, the Premier in particular, and the Minister for Regional Transport both said there are no plans to reinstate the rail corridor, certainly for the government to do it. So it is left open if a private group, go to the government and they turn up with a funded plan, not just a plan, but they turn up with a funded plan and they secure a lease on the corridor and they're going to be able to develop it to a standard that satisfies a state government engineer, then that's a possibility.
Yes.
But my personal view is, unless we discover coal between here and Wallangarra, or some, a real bulk, a genuine bulk commodity, it's not going to happen. Cattle don't travel on train, tomatoes don't travel on train, and wool has in the past, but, that's a seasonal thing.
And I think it would also be fair to say that people don't travel on trains north of Armidale.
Well, they don't, because there is no train.
Without a destination of some description beyond the border, beyond Wallangarra, as you said.
So I guess armed with that information and that confirmation from the government, I really am confident now that to pursue the rail trail. I know that, we're not going to be blocking trains, and I've said before, a rail trail does not stop a train coming back. The legislation, and this is the other thing that gives us comfort, is that the legislation allows that corridor to be repurposed back to trains if at any moment the government wishes to do it.
Well, that sounds to me like win-win.
You'd think.
Yeah, so, no, that's great. And I think, as we've said, at the moment, repurpose it. If it's potentially great for tourism, presents those opportunities, and if ever there is a desire to return trains, then the corridor's there, and it just it becomes a train track rather than a rail trail. So, no, very good. And you've got a meeting coming up soon with the Water Minister.
I do.
From memory.
I do. I'll be going down there with some experts. I'll be going down there with my Deputy Mayor, Todd Redwood, as well, to meet the Water Minister, Rose Jackson. And look, it's something that Adam had lined up before his announcement, I'm sure. So actually it's going to be on the day of his valedictory speech. He's moved that. But anyway, so on the 8th of May, we will be meeting with the Water Minister, and it's really just to get a couple of things. Confirmation that the money that Adam announced a while back, the $27 million for Malpas, is there. When we met with the Treasurer a few weeks ago, he said it was, but it'll be good in some written confirmation from the Water Minister, if that's at all possible. And we'll also be, pushing the case for the Oakey Dam wall and the Malpas, and the Oakey pipeline. Yeah,
great. Yeah, because that water, key to the future growth. Options or opportunities for the region obviously rely on water security, so that Oakey project is in full swing. Some people will be able to find online the council business papers are from the last couple of months that talk about that process, where we're headed, and again, any other information people might want, just feel free to yell at. We'd be happy to provide it. And I guess probably last, but by no means least, we're in the middle of our budget process at the moment. So that's essentially the process where staff have been working on the budget for the last a few months, and then get councillors into that process now over the next month with regular meetings. And we had our first one today.
First one today about fees and charges. But James, maybe talk us through, how is a budget set?
Well, it's always, it's a very good question. I mean, it's obviously always off the basis, particularly in local government land, about how much income that you've got, how much revenue that you've got, and that was always a bit of an issue for Armidale Regional Council till the past. Obviously, the special rate variation, we're in year one of that now. We'll go into year two of that.
So you've got a bit of extra cash.
Bit of extra cash.
How will that be spent?
Fundamentally, the special rate variation money is all really being committed to infrastructure renewal, our roads and our road infrastructure, the quality of those roads, the regrading, reshaping, resealing, as well as ongoing maintenance, pothole maintenance and all, all those sorts of things that present difficulties and that were really highlighted to us as part of the broader special rate variation consultation process we did with staff, with the community, I should say. And so, I mean, that's where fundamentally that money's going. Obviously, we've got probably something like about $1.3 billion worth of assets under our control.
And that's optimistically named assets.
Very optimistically named. A large chunk of that is roads. Hardly thought of as an asset, more of a liability, but nonetheless part of that asset register and need that regular upgrade. And so putting money into those and bringing them up to scratch. Our building assets right across the region, our parks, playground equipment in our parks, all of that sort of infrastructure, that infrastructure that people just take for granted and see day to day, week to week, and whenever they might visit a park, all of that sort of stuff that's been really run down over a long period of time, we've all of a sudden able to give that a new lease of life. And it's not all going to happen at once. Obviously, we've got to be a little prudent with how we spend that money, but just the ability to be able to start to plan that asset replacement or that asset maintenance out over an extended period of time, knowing that we're going to have some funds there to do it, is great. It gives the staff a bit of a new lease of life when they come into work each day, knowing that you've got a bit of money to do that. So obviously, understanding what our revenue profile is, but then obviously making sure that in terms of setting our expenditure budgets, making sure that we're getting good bang for buck, that we're not putting money into areas where we're not getting a good return for, making sure that we've done a number of service level reviews over the last 12 months, just really to understand what the demands of those services are, whether we're servicing them in the right way, whether they're services that we can pay a little less attention to because there's more important services, and that's an ongoing process too, that we've got a little bit more work to do, but essentially as far as the special rate variation funds go, it's really just about that asset upgrades and asset renewals and making sure we get that right.
In terms of the process, though, do your teams come to you and say, listen, this is our absolute base level, these are the people that we need, and in terms of the roads team, this is the amount that we'll need to spend on gravel and contractors, etc. Do they come to you with that and then you work up from there, or? Yeah,
well, for instance, in the road, let's just use roads as an example. We've got 10-year future roads plans, 10-year future footpath replacement plans. Plans that we know that if and look, up until now, what the situation's really been, if we had the money, that's what we'd like to do moving forward. But usually what will happen is that the teams will have got those forward plans. They'll be able to go to those plans, and subject to the amount of money that they might be able to have to spend that we're going to give them, they'll set the program accordingly. Now, often what happens is, we start any of these processes and we probably find that we're $10 or $15 million over where we need to be, because everyone has a bit of historically, it's a bit of a wish list, and then it needs to be culled down. What we've tried to do is be a lot more responsible over the last couple of years and say to people, okay, your funding envelope last year was X. Given the proportion of funds that we've got, you can have that little bit extra. Come back to us with a program, and people always go over a little bit, but come back to us with a program that largely fits that envelope. And it's about getting the staffing groups now to do the work and really understand what it is they're bidding for and the works that they can do, and putting some responsibility back on them as well to be able to suggest works programs that are reasonably responsible and can be achieved, because there's nothing worse than going out every year budget-wise promising $40 million worth of capital works and only delivering 20. Everyone's scratching their heads saying, how did that happen? So, getting better in that space and being responsible and reasonable, but more making sure that those forward asset maintenance plans, again, footpaths and roads come to mind, and parks and gardens and playground equipment, but, just making sure that they're getting an equal share of the funding as well in terms of what comes forward to council. And then there's things like the library, where we're broadcasting from today, just making sure that gets the level of funding that it needs to keep refreshing book stock. And there's so many touch points that local governments, are involved in right across the region. It's a big remit, but I think we do it reasonably well. Not perfect, but we do it reasonably well.
Now, last time you gave a question without notice to me that's, I believe, caused a little bit of a fracas in certain quarters, but I'll have one without notice to you. You're doing any cycling in the next couple of weeks?
You could loosely refer to what I do as cycling. We've got the Tour de Rocks coming up, as most people would know. That starts on Thursday the 18th and finishes on Saturday the 20th, I think, or 19th to the 21st. Anyway, Thursday to Saturday. And council, we have a huge team in this year. Last year we had about 8 or 9 riders. This year I think we're up to about 25, and riders from across our business, and we've also got a number of businesses and people from outside the council who have come to us and said, hey, we'd love to join your team.
That's great.
And be part of that. So that's absolutely fantastic. And so that's the ride from Armidale to Ebor via the hills.
By a lot of hills and dirt roads.
115 clicks the first day, and then with about a 1,950 metre gain, I think, Mr. Mayor, gain in height. So we're going to have I'm certainly going to have my work cut out for me. I think yourself and a few of the younger members are going to be able to go hell for leather, but it's going to be a bit of a challenge for me. But again, a great thing to be involved with. It's great camaraderie and morale building from a council perspective. Great for the council to be involved in it. We got so many positive comments last year from not only the organisers but other participants of the event that just said how great it was to see a council team entered in. And this year they're going to see us all over the place. And I think, again, just to be able to raise money for the greater good in terms of a cure for cancer is the most important thing.
And the Tour de Rocks committee do a cracking job.
They do a great job, yeah.
And I think there's 300 plus riders. It's a big deal.
Yeah. So we kick off 7 a.m. Thursday week. Thursday the 18th, I think it is, or 19th. I've lost track of time, but again, it's great to see so many people firstly registered in it, but so many people from council really keen to be part of that as well, and the fundraising exercise and just playing our bit for the community. So well done to the council team and everybody that's put their hand up, and we thank council for the great support that it's providing us to partake in that event.
Brilliant. Well, we're closing in on the half-hour mark. What a good place to pull up. So, provided we both survive, or at least one of us survives the tour, we'll be back in a few weeks.
We will indeed. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Great to share this
Thanks,
half
James.
hour with you.